Good morning, everybody. Happy Tuesday to you. It's a beautiful day. It's 10 o'clock. It's time for Tim with Tim. So you found me. I'm sorry for the trouble. I could explain it to you. It's a long explanation. It boils down to these software platforms. I'm using several, of course, to make Tim with Tim happen: Facebook, YouTube, and another one called Boxcast. Right now, there's an integration issue between those, and so all of the recent Tim with Tims back for months have disappeared off of Facebook. They'll come back, I understand, and this stream today is probably not going to Facebook either. So you're gonna have to find me on YouTube for a while. I'm sorry, and not a thing I can do to fix it. It's one of those things where, if they just leave stuff alone, because it works just fine until somebody does an update, and then it doesn't work, and they'll fix it. And I just pray they fix it soon. But anyway, thank you for finding me. Thank you for making Tim with Tim something important in your daily life in the Word, because it is important in my life in the Word. So here we go. We're in chapter 35 of Ezekiel, verses 1 to 15. It's a short chapter, but in a lot of ways, as you read tomorrow, you need to see how chapters 35 and 36 are literally one piece. I know that sounds weird, but they literally are one piece. We're going to take them across 2 days, but this first message, set your face against Mount Seir, Ezekiel is told, and he prophesies against Mount Seir. Mount Seir, of course, is the mountain, the chief mountain in the land of Edom. And this is yet another prophecy against the people, the nation of Edom. Remember back in, was it chapter 25? Edom was listed among one of those, I think, 7 hostile neighbors, and Ezekiel has a prophecy against each of them. And so he's coming back to hit Edom again. Edom is different in the list of Israel's enemy neighbors. And I think you know why, because we've read it all together, right? And we've talked about this. Edom is the nation that is descendant from Esau, Jacob and Esau. So in today's reading, when it says that it has to do with this ancient hostility, what is that, verse 5? This ancient hostility, this eternal hatred for the people of Israel. That ancient hostility, as we know, it goes back to that struggle in the womb between Jacob and Esau. The brothers made peace at the end of their lives. We read about that, but the relationship between the nations has always been really complicated. The book of Deuteronomy, God continues to tell Israel to show special patience and kindness and forbearance with their brother Edom. You see, it's not just that they're a neighbor nation, they're a brother nation. They're to the southeast of Judah. And so it's that identity as the brother nation. Jacob and Esau, Israel and Edom. That's what makes it so complicated. And, in your own life, I think you would agree with me that anybody close enough to hate is probably close enough to love. They say there's that fine line between love and hate. And you sort of see that playing out here. Your brother nations, you share a history. And so for that reason, it would seem that the nations would be able to have at least an agreement to coexist without hostility, but it never really seems to play out that way. And especially here during the Babylonian conquest of Judah and Jerusalem. It seems that during that time, Edom has a very complicated sort of role to play in that advance of Babylon against Judah. From what we can piece together, and some of this is historical, mostly from Ezekiel, from Jeremiah, and of course the book of Obadiah. Obadiah is the prophet against Edom. What we seem to see is that when the Babylonians had Jerusalem under siege, people would try to escape, and they would escape to Edom, and the Edomites would slaughter them. The Edomites were not kind to the refugees who would pour into Edom when Judah was under attack from the Babylonians. Other than that, the Edomites, from the book of Obadiah, it doesn't seem that they actively participated in the attack, when the Babylonians attacked Judah, but it does seem that they were particularly guilty of rejoicing in the downfall of Judah, and also kind of standing by and doing nothing, letting Israel fall. And then, as we find here in Ezekiel, our reading for today, chapter 35, they rejoice in the downfall of Israel. And then when Israel is weak and it seems, for the most part, done for, Edom moves in. They move in to take possession of the land. It's sort of that ancient struggle, right? Esau lost his birthright to Jacob, and so now Edom sees that opportunity to reclaim the birthright, to reclaim the promise, and understand the land, the promised land is forever intertwined with that promise, with that covenant, with that birthright that Esau lost. And so Edom is going to reclaim that birthright. Edom's going to take over the land. And that's what ties chapters 35 and what we'll read tomorrow, chapters 35 and 36 together. It's all about the restoration of Israel, but importantly, the restoration of Israel to their land. They're going to retake the promised land. It's that possession of the promised land. So understand this section of Ezekiel, chapter 34, talks about the restoration of the monarchy through a descendant of David who will sit on the throne and execute justice. And now that the restoration to the land. But before you can talk about that, you've got to deal with Edom. Edom has moved in. Edom intends to take over to possess the promised land. And so chapter 35 represents that message, that prophecy against Mount Seir and the people of Edom. Chapter 35 is this prophecy against Mount Seir. And then, of course, chapter 36, where we'll be tomorrow, the restoration of Israel is pronounced in terms of a proclamation, preaching to the mountains of Israel. You see that? So that's what ties these together. So this ancient hostility plays out as Edom tries to move in. In these 15 verses, you'll see that the punishment of Edom will fit their crime. So first off, in the sense that they rejoiced in the downfall of Israel, their brother nation, others will rejoice in the downfall of Edom. There's this sense in which, Edom thinks that, they don't really seem to understand that the whole world doesn't view them with favor. And so literally when Edom falls, everybody's just going to rejoice in that. Edom doesn't really seem to have any real friends among the nations. The nations will rejoice in your downfall, just like you rejoiced in the downfall of Israel. After that, the desolation of Edom. And honestly, history plays this out. The Babylonians end up turning against Edom as well. Edom becomes a desolate place, no longer to be prominent. But you'll see that desolation is prophesied here. It was the desolation of Israel, of course. It was a part of their punishment for sin. And so now that same desolation is going to come upon Edom, the brother nation of Israel. You'll also notice here in verse 4 that we call it the recognition formula. It's all through Ezekiel. It's the idea that this will happen and then they will know that I am the Lord. Then they will know. And that's the recognition formula in chapter 35, verse 4. I will demolish your cities. I will make you desolate. And then you will know that I am the Lord. Then you will know. You see, the fact is that promised land, as I said, it's very intertwined with the covenant. But theologically in the Old Testament, that land is the Lord's. It's God's. Now, God has given it to his people, but it is still to be understood as God's possession. It is God's prerogative, and it is God who has given that land eternally to Israel. And just because Edom sees an opportunity to move in, that doesn't mean it's theirs for the taking. They can't just come in and claim the promised land. That's never going to work. And for that reason, God is going to remove them and punish them for the way they have treated their brother nation, Israel. I'll say it again. Anybody close enough to hate is close enough to love. And this hostility between Israel and Edom, between Jacob and Esau, as it plays out through history, is just, in some ways, for me, just full of sadness. Again, they're brothers, they're brother nations. They should be able to be allies, but instead they are enemies. So again, take it to heart. Anybody in your life, Anybody in your life that's close enough for you to hate, close enough to love, learn to recognize in the face of your enemy, the face of your brother. For me, that's always the message of the hostility between Israel and Edom. So we'll pick up here tomorrow, chapter 36. It's a longer chapter, but it's beautiful. It has some rather wonderful passages here. I love in the prophecy of restoration, this amazing promise of a new heart. So pay attention to that. I want to talk about that tomorrow. So we'll pick up right there, chapter 36, verses 1 to 38. I'll see you in the morning. I promise I'll be here. You got to be here. Again, if you just keep coming back to the YouTube page, at the YouTube channel there. Actually, you could subscribe to my YouTube channel and you can skip all the craziness of Facebook. I would highly recommend it. YouTube is easier. You don't have to join YouTube. You don't have to have a page on YouTube. All you got to do is follow this channel, and you'll be notified every time I go live. And you can do 10 with Tim every single day right here on YouTube. So, hey, go for it. You don't even have to go back to Facebook if you don't want to. Just join me here every day at 10 o'clock, Lord willing, and I'll see you tomorrow for 10 with Tim. I love you guys, one way or the other. Wherever I find you, wherever you find me, I'll see you tomorrow, okay? Have a good day.